Hey there, Todd Wiley, Certified Law Attorney with Generations Legal Group. Today we're up to question number 12. And today's question is, how do you know to choose between a revocable living trust or an irrevocable trust? Very common question. And the answer is actually pretty simple. You will almost always choose a revocable living trust. Okay. I encourage those for probate avoidance to make sure that nothing goes through probate, to make sure that the transition of power from typically with a revocable living trust, you create it, you are the trustee, you're also the beneficiary of it. And if you become incapacitated, that transfer of power from you being the trustee to someone else being the trustee is pretty straightforward in the trust. And it's simply to avoid probate. And I would say a whole lot of people should do that for their estate planning purposes. Now, an irrevocable trust, and if you missed question number 11, I went into this some, but an irrevocable trust is a more fancy trust, as we call it, and it is more complicated, and it's to achieve certain purposes. And some of those purposes are to get something out of your estate so that it's not taxed with all of your other things. And a lot of times we will do a irrevocable life insurance trust. That's where we put insurance into this trust. And since it's in an irrevocable trust, the wording of the trust makes it so that it's not part of your estate, and therefore the life insurance can pay your estate tax if you do have an estate tax issue. Okay, that's just one example. Another very common example of an irrevocable trust is if you want to protect assets from Medicaid. And with an irrevocable trust that is worded properly, it will get things out of your estate for Medicaid purposes so that you won't lose those assets when you need long-term care. Now, there is a 5-year look back, and I'll go over that in other videos, but just understand an irrevocable trust is complicated, and it is to serve other purposes. So typically you would go to an attorney and say, yeah, I want to make sure I don't go through probate. And we would do a revocable living trust for that. But then you may bring up other issues like, hey, I'm concerned about this or that or whatever. And so then we would make it an irrevocable trust. Another common example is particularly with late in life marriages. So couple, they divorce or lose their first spouse, and then they get married and they have their kids, but no joint children. And so they may want to do a joint trust because they've been married long enough and they've generated a lot of assets together. And so they want to do a joint trust, but when one of them dies, they want to make sure their assets go to their children. And so sometimes with a revocable living trust, we will put in there that when the first spouse passes away, that trust then becomes irrevocable. So the surviving trustee can't change the trust so that all of the assets go to their children or bypass something. And so that's one of those things that will come up in the meeting with the attorney to say, I'm kind of concerned about this. How would we handle that situation? And sometimes it is with an irrevocable trust. Okay. And so typically you're going into a revocable living trust. And then if you have some very special situations in your estate plan that require other measures, that would then possibly bring in the irrevocable trust. Okay. I will spend more time on very specific types of trust, but a very common question is, should I do revocable trust or irrevocable trust? And the answer is almost always, yeah, you probably should do a revocable, and then let's talk about the irrevocable for special circumstances. Okay, thanks. If you have further questions, please call the office 479-601-4119 or go to our website, generationslegalgroup.com, and there's a lot of information there, and you can schedule an appointment. Okay, thanks.